Welcome back. Episode 8. To those that are listening, firstly, welcome wherever you are in the world, whatever you are doing, in your car, in the bath, in the shower. We like to get creative with these. If you're surfing, I don't know, I'm sure they've got wireless headphones out there these days that can do these kinds of things. Firstly, thank you for being here and investing time in yourself. We are super excited to introduce you to a guest on today's podcast. We're sitting next to her. Her name is Laura. She is a holistic psychologist, and we cannot wait to explore her mind, her intellect, and her learnings and lessons throughout the process. She's been in the practice for 10 years and has been in a whole host of roles, and we can't wait to formally introduce you to her and have her on here to bring some wisdom and learnings to you all. Welcome, Laura.
Oh, thanks guys for having me. So honoured to be here and speak with you and share the wisdom with your community. I'm so excited for that. So thank you.
We can't wait, and the importance of understanding the different ways in bringing these, I guess, learnings and lessons, but also practices to people from a new aspect, this more holistic approach. And before we even go any further, I want to actually break down that word, For me, when I think of holistic, I think of whole list tick. The whole list. Ticking the whole list off. Instead of just looking at the things that initially come up, look at the whole list of things that incorporate whatever you're looking into, the whole list tick. That came up for me today.
I like that.
I've never heard of that.
You kept that one quiet. You just dropped it on the potty. I've got a good one for later.
The whole list tick.
The whole list tick. There you go, fam. That's all you need from this podcast. You got a whole list to tick off. No, it is. It's one of those words that is very common in this space that we're in, this more conscious space. And what I feel it is connecting back with our roots, is connecting back with our human nature, rather than looking for things outside of ourselves to make us better as humans.
I guess for me as well, like, it's looking at the whole picture.
Yes.
So often, like when I first came into psychology, it was just the mind. And you can't just heal someone by looking at one aspect. It's looking at the whole picture and what aligns with that person, because we're so all individual. So taking a holistic approach to life and the different avenues that you can take along the way, and that knowing that that's perfect for you. Yeah,
100%. And tell us about that process and that journey from learning, your standard psychology and working in that field, and then now moving into that more holistic approach, knowing and understanding that there was so much more depth to these practices that you were bringing, maybe seeing that lack of embodiment in the practices or the lessons that you were sharing with these people, and knowing there was a wider approach that you could bring to your clients. Tell us the journey with learning it all intellectually and now moving into the more embodiment and feeling it in your body and knowing that there was something more to it that you could offer.
Yeah, it's such a huge journey when I think back now, because I've been embodying these practices for such a long time. I feel like that's all I've been doing. So when I reflect back in doing the psychology degree to start with, it's very medical informed. Back then, it was an amazing framework to work by, and still is. And I think going through that whole process, when I was doing my uni degree, I was a single mom at the time and I was trying to afford a mortgage. So then I went into PT as a way. Originally, obviously, it was a financial gain for me. And then going through that process alone, and when you look back on your journey, it all happened perfectly. Seeing these women that I was supporting, just trying to work with their bodies. So even started back then, it was just a body thing. And I was like, hold on a minute, they have the mind here. And because I'm studying psychology, how does the mind come into this, and the body and the nutrition and all of that? So it started back then. And then I went from there into, once I'd finished my degree, into the prison systems, the addiction system, and then the mental health units and emergency departments. And even then, intuitively, it's not even, because I often get asked by a lot of psychologists, how did you, what system did you take, or what pathway did you take? And I said, I took a pathway that felt right for me. And it's going against all of the status quo. I didn't know the answer. In fact, I was terrified. I was terrified that I had to uphold this particular accolade, and what would that be like if I moved away? That was my whole life. It was like an identity I'd created, right? So going into the systems and feeling that it didn't feel right for me, and that we were only working within this particular framework, and then feeling how I felt, you know, because I'd seen a lot of psychologists in my time as well, from learning and from my own challenges. And even from that perspective, seeing how they worked, I knew there was a bigger picture. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that there was a big picture.
So on the framework that you touched on, what did the framework limit you from being able to do?
Well, it's just coming from a medical perspective. So it's medication and therapy. So that's whether that's your typical framework around cognitive behavioural therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, all of them beautiful modalities, but it didn't look the bigger picture, I didn't feel, in terms of the energy in the body.
Right. So it was more, there was more addressing the symptoms.
Yeah.
And you understood that there was so much more complexity to what people were feeling, and there was a deeper cause to that. And you needed to find new ways to address and cultivate whatever that was.
Yeah, and I think that specifically landed for me when I was working in the emergency departments and the mental health units. I was a senior psychologist across a lot of the South Metro, you know, big hospitals, and I just saw the revolving door. And I was like, God, Laura, like, I didn't go into this space to just see this cycle continue. Like, I didn't believe, again, intuitively, that we have to prolong our suffering. And it was from that, and then hearing, you know, like I shared with you guys earlier, hearing the challenges and the struggles, and basically what I saw was them not having a voice or being seen for who they truly were. So then I just went on this big pathway of trauma-informed care. There wasn't enough of it in the system. You know, I was even teaching universities, new students coming through, nurses, midwives, about trauma-informed care, because they're actually not taught it in the university. So it's like anyone that comes into your door, because we all have trauma on a spectrum, but they're not even taught any of this stuff, just even how to manage someone's emotions or regulate them coming through the door. So I was like, wow, like there's a bigger picture right here. So for me, seeing that while I was working in the government roles, and, you know, there's so many amazing people in that space and so many amazing practices being done, but seeing the revolving door, I was like, I need to step away from this to find out how to release trauma from the body, because it's the thoughts. And again, knowing that once you've regulated your emotions, your logical mind can work more appropriately. So I was like, how do we then release trauma from the body? Because it gets stored from years of it, to be able to function our minds properly. And that's what took me on a holistic view of energy work and then breath work, and leads me here today.
What a journey. And it's so, like, we've got so many different avenues we can go down. We want to, like, you were just talking there a little bit on trauma. We've actually had a question come through on our story that we just put up. And the question is, do you have any tips for trauma healing from extensive childhood bullying?
Yeah, it's a huge question. And, you know, trauma is something that is, you know, on a collective level, we all suffer from trauma, and I think this is something that isn't educated well enough. A lot of people that I've spoken to, that I've worked one-on-one in and said, oh, I had a great childhood, I don't have any trauma, but then when I probe and, you know, pull it apart.
Let's dissect the word trauma, because I think there's a lot of misinformation around what that even is. People have this connotation around it as it's a real negative thing, and it's a real scary thing. Yeah. And it's often misinterpreted. What's your definition of trauma in the first place before we dive right into understanding it? Yeah,
I feel like trauma is any particular space where you have not been seen, heard, and accepted for who you fully are. And then you've got the bigger versions of trauma where, you know, you've not been able to trust yourself, or that's been taken away in some way, so you don't feel safe in your body. But essentially, you know, we're talking about trauma, and it could be that, you know, your lollipop was taken off you at kindy and had that detachment taken from you. That's trauma of like, oh my God, what just happened to this thing that I had? And that stores in the body. You know, I've gone back to people with memories in utero where there's trauma from what they've heard outside of the mum's womb. because they've taken that on. So trauma is on a spectrum. It's not just these big catastrophic events. Yeah, they're horrific, and I'll never take that away from anyone, but trauma is on a spectrum of you just not being seen and heard for who you are is trauma.
And you're saying it stores in the body. So what do you mean by it stores in the body? And then how can we address that?
What I mean by stores in the body is that we are energy. So we have an energetic frequency. If people have known about chakras, and we have this 6-foot energetic field outside of us, which is often known as the matrix if you're talking about quantum physics. So when we have gone through some form of traumatic event, it's like these inner children within us stay within this energetic field is the best way to describe it, because I'm such a visual person. So say if you had trauma at 6, that 6-year-old version of you stays within the matrix.
They don't grow.
No, they stay.
Right, okay.
And that unresolved trauma, because they're like, I need to be seen and heard, keeps cycling then into our future.
So you're only being seen and heard as a 6-year-old. And you still like that as an adult. So you've got this adult body, but you're still operating from a 6-year-old state of mind in terms of that energy.
Yeah. And because a lot of our belief systems are formed between 0 to 8, often as an adult we're making decisions from an 8-year-old version of who we are, because we're still cycling. And if you think about it, and I have so many conversations and I'm like, when has that happened for you previously? And you don't link it because it's a different situation, but very similar themes, very similar feelings. It's a different person, but they've still got similar traits. And because we've then, from these belief systems, created a filter in our mind, we push out everything then within our field that doesn't actually coincide with what's in our filter system in this library in our brain. So if I have a belief that I'm unlovable, I will push anything out that shows me that I'm lovable, and I'll attract people in that
don't love
that just keep regenerating this belief system for me. Even though as adult versions, logically it doesn't make sense, we still have these inner children energetically stuck going, I just want to be loved, I just want to be loved. And that's what I mean about energy gets stored in the body and in our energetic field. So often you've got all of these versions of yourself still looking for this resolve, and we're trying to get it from where we are at now.
Yeah. And it can be so unconscious too, right? Like
So
there's many adults out there that are unaware of that trauma that's still stuck in there, or they're unaware of themselves that have been in that position as a child that wasn't seen or met or heard or able to fully express that traumatic experience.
Yeah.
So they hold on to that energy and it sticks in the body. I don't know if you've seen that beautiful statue and piece of artwork that is at Burning Man, and it's of 2 adults sitting back to back, and they're in an argument clearly, and then they burn this timber, and then there's 2 children that are just touching each other's hands in these adult bodies. And that's what I see this as. I see a lot of adults out there that are just literally wanting to be their inner child that needs to be vulnerable and open and needs to be heard and seen and feel through that emotion that they weren't able to feel through, potentially because their parents didn't give them that space, or that traumatic experience happened and they ran or fled from that moment.
Yeah. And then our energy closes down then. You're talking about your chakras and your heart space specifically. It's our biggest energy center, the one place that holds fear and love. And if we shut that down, all we feel is fear. So then we can't attract anything else in. And I think this is the most important part specifically for me, because a part of my story was my dad never told me verbally that he loved me. So as a child, I then created this story around men that I'm unlovable. So then obviously you can imagine the relationships that I got into and the cycles that it created. But what I actually learned was that it wasn't that these men didn't love me. It was the fact that I wasn't willing to receive it, because I'd literally closed down my heart chakra to receive it from my dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, as the adult version, because before the ages of 8, we're not logically sound. So we create these stories of self. But as the adult version, I'm logically sound. And I'm like, of course my dad loves me. He's never verbally said it, but he shows me in many different ways. So when I actually became so aware of that, I was like, I can actually open myself up. Yeah. So uncomfortable for anyone that shut their heart center down, which is the majority of the population. so uncomfortable, but it's in those moments that I feel physically I'm going to contract.
Yeah.
I choose to stay open anywhere. Anytime I feel like I want to run, I choose to stay
And
in the uncomfortability of it.
I was about to touch on this, and it was so beautifully articulated, having these little children still in us. And what I want to elaborate on, I can hear the listeners going, well, what do I do to work through it and to grow that inner child? And what you're saying here is staying open through that uncomfortability. So can you give an example or explain a little bit more in detail, like what that actually looks like and how people could practice staying open in a situation where maybe that little inner child is screaming?
Yeah.
Should we go to that question with that? Give an example for that question, that person that's experienced childhood bullying from school.
Yeah.
How can they move through that? How can they let that child be seen and felt so they can move through that traumatic experience?
Yeah, and I guess for me, like sharing our own experience, I think is really important, and you guys can too. But this was similar for me, is because I closed my heart center down, which is probably what's happened to the viewer, is that you're not even willing to receive relationships now in your adult life. And this happened to me. So even though I had multiple friends, I didn't allow them into a deep connection. There was no trust. There was no safety. But what it actually comes down to is actually trusting ourselves and feeling safe within our bodies. And that's a feeling. And for everyone that's been through trauma, we often disassociate from feelings. So the best practice is stillness. Really feeling, because I often get people say, Laura, you keep telling me to feel. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know what it feels like. And it's like, well, it's a muscle. So you've literally not used that muscle for a very long time. So it's now around when you feel something, really feeling it and going, oh, why do I feel angry? Or that's what it feels like in my body. Or, oh my God, I feel excited. That's how it feels in my body. It's getting aware rather than moving on to the next thing. It's the being present with the feelings. And then from then, I think the biggest thing, there's so many practices you can do when you actually receive a compliment from a friend or a stranger, actually sitting and just receiving rather than being like, oh no, your clothes are nicer than mine, or oh no, your hair looks nicer. Like literally receive it, because that's opening your heart and just making eye contact and saying, oh, thank you. And just being quiet straight after it.
It's a huge practice.
Yeah. And it's such a simple practice, but it's not easy. It's not easy because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And what you're getting at here and what I'm seeing in my mind is, it is when love is being showed to you, instead of closing down, opening up in any form. It might be oh, thank you for holding the door, or a wee wave in traffic. Let it land. Let it all the way in, rather than just brushing it off as, oh no, it's something I should do, or it's not, I shouldn't receive that, or like you're saying, projecting it back. Just let it in, let all of it in, all that love, because you're worth it.
Yeah.
And that allows you to give it as well. So
yeah. And another amazing practical tool for anyone listening is mirror work. You become your own parent. And if you've stood in front of a mirror and looked at yourself, everything in you screams resistance, like, this is silly, this is the longest 5 minutes of my life. But if you actually stand in the mirror and say, I'm choosing to love you today, and it's not even I love you, because it has to be realistic or else you don't embody it. But if you choose to, or say, I'm willing to love you more today than I did yesterday, whatever feels more realistic to you, is you actually speaking to them inner children within you. You might be looking at yourself now as your adult version, but you're actually allowing them to receive it. And it's so uncomfortable to stand there for 2 minutes even. But that's the resistance within you that's not allowing yourself to receive. So if you can stand there and do that over time, again, practice allows you to stay open.
Beautiful. There's a good little one for the tool kitty in front of the mirror. And it's funny, we've just taken our facilitators through a similar thing, slightly different, but it's that connection with self and seeing your human body, but you're seeing beyond that as well, because you're connecting with your own energy and your own awareness. And it is a really powerful practice when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. And like you're saying, starting to show love for yourself. I'm choosing, because you get to choose in every moment.
Absolutely.
We get to choose in every moment of who we want to be, how we want to show up, what we want to do, what energy we want to show. So choosing to love yourself, massive.
And that love, like for me 2 years ago, I wouldn't know what loving myself was. If I heard Ruth say that 2 years ago, I'd have been like, what is that? what is that, eh? But it's being present with yourself and sitting with whatever emotion arises and being completely okay with that and loving whatever that is.
Yeah.
And loving whatever that is being non-judgmental and being okay with whatever you're feeling, whatever you're experiencing, without judgment or criticism for that part of yourself.
Judgment is huge as well. Like, the fear of judgment from other people is only because you're so judgmental of yourself. Like, if you didn't actually judge who you were, you wouldn't even be afraid of it from somebody else. It's paralyzing, you know, and that's part of the trauma that you've been through. So it's in those moments where you feel judgment from others, really go inward and be like, where am I judging myself in this moment? Because everyone is a mirror. Everyone is literally reflecting back your own feelings, which is beautiful. Like this, when I actually got that and it really landed, I was like, oh my God, like everyone's teaching me something about myself. It's amazing. Even the things that I admired in someone, I was like, oh my God, that's in me. I didn't realize this, or the things that, you know, really frustrated me about someone. I was like, what is going on for me in this moment? Like, where is that within me that I'm not accepting and acknowledging? And when you can actually do that, it's so empowering that you realize that we're all the same. You know, there's no one better than or less than. We're all exactly the same, traveling the same journey, feeling the same emotions. And when we can get that, you have so much love and compassion for everybody around you, that you just feel ignited every single day with the connections that you come across. And what happens with that is you change your filter system then. So neuroplasticity is amazing. So you may have had this filter system from your first 8 years of life, but the more you lean into these practices, you start to change that. So then your whole world starts to shift. You start bringing in people that make you feel loved because you're starting to embody it. Like, I don't have anyone around me that reflects that back to me anymore, because I've shifted that within me. And that's the powerful part. It all comes back to self, all of it.
I love that. And for those that are also a little bit unaware of who they are as a being, what do they say? Look at the 5 closest people around you, and they're a reflection of you as a person.
Yep.
And if they're not sharing and showing you that unconditional love and reflecting excitement and inspiration back to you, then zoom out a little bit and maybe change those people and create some space from those people and start with these self-love practices and start reflecting in.
Yeah, it's so important. Even when people say to me, I don't know who I am, I always say, come back to, what do you feel aligned with? Where are you actually not showing up with something that makes you feel good? Because often we're in jobs and relationships and friendships through fear of loss, or whatever the belief system may be. But it's actually coming back and going, does this feel right for me? Because that's, you know, and I listened to one of your podcasts. I can't remember which one it was, but I remember when you stepped away from what didn't feel right. And that was me in the government roles. I was a single mom, and I literally resigned from both of my positions in the government role, even though I could have had another 12 months where I could have gone and explored. But I knew universally doors aren't going to open for me if I keep attached. So I was terrified, but I knew, again, trusting, this is for me. It feels it in my body. All my mind was telling me is like, oh, Laura, what about the bills? And what are your private school fees? And all of the things. But I was like, no, this doesn't feel right for me. And then as soon as I detached, energetically, I felt so free. And then my whole world just changed. And I've never looked back since. So that's how you find out who you are, coming back to what actually feels fulfilling for you. Even if it doesn't make sense, you have to follow the feeling. And again, that muscle builds and it gets stronger. So now I make decisions like this. If I'm afraid, I'm like, yes, it's for me. Let's go.
It's so clear and obvious now, right? But I bet in those moments, it's like, oh, and it's the same with our journey. But at the beginning, you're thinking, there's no way. If I leave this, I've got these bills to pay. I've still got to finance that or whatever. But what you don't realize is your energy is so suppressed when you're attached to these things that are not aligned with you. And when you let them go and you start aligning with the things that are aligned with you, that is when the energy is just flowing out of you, and that abundance is going to come back in. And what that requires is, firstly, humbling yourself. You need self-humility. People aren't willing to do that because they don't have self-humility of truly being okay with having nothing.
Yeah.
When you're okay with having nothing, you can say no to everything. It doesn't matter what debts and things you've got to pay. You go and stick to your aligned journey, because your belief in what is going to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
It's an unwavering faith, and that energy just flows out of you.
Yep.
You attract these beautiful humans into your life. Opportunities just throwing themselves at you. And there's just no looking back. Like you're saying, once you're on that track, you just make decisions like that. And yes, it changes a lot because you're trusting. You got such a strong trust with that inner guidance.
Yeah, and it's the more you do it, the stronger that trust becomes, because, you know, I'm with you with what you're saying. It's like, I can imagine so many people listening to this and be like, but how did you get there? That's the mind. That's the fear of needing to know the steps. Intuition doesn't need steps. It needs knowing and trust. And you know when something doesn't feel right for you, but you're choosing to walk into it anyway. You know it. So it's like asking yourself the question, why am I choosing to do this? And there's often a fear-based story. So a lot of people, which I'll explain to the audience, is how do you know when it's fear and intuition? And really simply, you know, because this really confused me for a long time, fear is a story and intuition is just a knowing. There's no story behind it. It doesn't make sense actually. But if there's fear, it's you're going to lose money, you've got no bills to pay, that's fear. But intuition is like, God, this doesn't make sense, and I know it's something I need to do. That's how you differentiate, and it's always trusting that other side, even though it's scary.
So how do we get people to trust in that?
Oh, God.
Because it's a feeling.
It is a feeling.
It's not an intellectual measurement. It's a feeling in your body. And we talked about this last week, about how people don't have access to that feeling because they're so suppressed emotionally, and they don't have that connection with it. I never used to have that connection with it until I started clearing my vessel. I started fasting and doing breath work. And then I had these feelings come up and I'm like, holy shit, my gut is reacting, and it reacts a lot now when I have these messages come through and I have that clarity. So what would you say is the best way to start gaining that relationship with ourselves, that trust, and also connecting with intuition, that feeling in the body?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think it comes back down to everything like you were just saying, nutrition, nourishing your mind with expansive things, not Netflix. So, you know, really expanding your knowledge, whether it's a podcast or reading, but not to a point that it's distraction, like we were talking about earlier. It's just literally just expanding your mind, moving your body in a way that feels good for you energetically, not to burn the calories, not to get a sweat up. It's actually what feels good for my body, because the more you actually do that, you start to trust the feelings again, the breath, the stillness, coming back, you know, resting the mind. I was sharing with the guys earlier that a practice I've been doing every single day at the moment is clearing my chakra centers, because if that energetically isn't flowing properly, I'm not flowing either. And then I'll go into a 30-minute meditation, which sounds like a really long time. But the question I want to ask you, if you feel resistance against that, is why you're not willing to sit with yourself for half an hour. You should become your own best friend. Like, no one has got your back more than you. So it's like, why aren't you willing to sit with yourself for just half an hour a day to still the mind? No guided meditation, no music, just complete stillness. And then when you do that, you start to build a relationship with your body again. You start to feel the feelings, and then it's a lot easier, because I'd disassociated for a really long time. I think another really good way is to follow the signs. If you can't follow your body at the moment, trust the signs that keep showing up over and over the cycles, and then make a different decision, knowing that if you keep showing up in that same space, nothing changes unless you change something. So if you can't feel it, then follow the signs externally to you, and then do the practices that we just spoke about to be able to come back internally to who you are.
I love that. Going back to those feelings and those new sensations that people are going to start to witness, and I think going back to the heart opening one, and people are getting the overwhelming feeling or even in slight discomfort, and they use these things to escape that, escapism and distracting, alcohol, drinking, sex, drugs,
Music,
food, all of these things.
Simple things that people maybe don't think they're distractions, but anything that you're just unconsciously doing to potentially fill space and time.
To create comfort. Yeah, when we're feeling that slight discomfort, we're running to things to comfort. What can we bring our audience to understand that is that door opening to heightened sensations, heightened connection to intuition, to self? What can we do to reiterate that and create trust and faith in the discomfort, to learn more and grow with ourselves, sitting in silence, addressing these emotions coming up?
Yeah.
knowing that we're learning and growing in those moments, yeah, it is really uncomfortable. And those that are afraid to be with themselves, I too was really afraid. I couldn't even go to the beach by myself. I couldn't go for a walk by myself. I always had to be with company because I was afraid of myself. So regaining that relationship with ourselves, I think I've just answered my own question. We've got to lean into that discomfort, be okay, be open, and be compassionate with our inner child that's going to be in there, that's going to come up, that's going to be crying, that's wanting attention, wanting to be heard and seen and felt. Where can we start creating that relationship? Like, where does it start? Does it start with a stillness, do you think? Or does it start with coming to workshops, breath, or nutrition? What advice would you give to start with that? Would it be the stillness?
I think you've got to align with what feels good for you. So with what you just, mentioned, when you listen to what Ryan's saying, like, is it nutrition? Is it meditation? Is it a workshop? Which one feels good? Yeah. Write them all out and then literally focus on each one. And if the workshop stands out more, you start with that. If nutrition stands out more, you start with that. You don't do them all at once because that's, again, the mind trying to get a quick fix. So you've got to remember, guys, that this journey is a process. There's no end game. There's no destination. This was me. I was trying to find every quick fix going. There isn't one, but that's the beautiful part now is that, oh my God, I get to evolve forever. I get to keep turning into a newer version of me every single day. That excites me. Where before, if someone would have said that to me, I would have been like, oh God, there's no end game. But again, that's a mind thing. When we actually come back into our bodies, I always want to feel that expansion. And if I ever get to a point where I'm content, which we get to, my body craves it now. It's like I want to expand again. Who can I connect with? How can I learn and grow? How can I reach that next level?
We were talking about this today, weren't we?
Yeah.
Finding that slight discomfort in ourselves where that growth is.
Yeah.
And continuing to push ourselves mentally, physically and emotionally. And that's where we grow, right? But to get to that point, doing the work, doing the inner work and facing ourselves fully. Yeah. Multi-complexly. The emotional, the psychological, the physical, the internal. And then stepping into that space of expansion and growing externally, I feel, starting internal, growing external.
Yeah. And a lot of people I've found, the sayings, we're afraid of failure, but a lot of people are actually afraid of their potential because they've never actually been into it. So that's that fear of uncertainty. It's like, oh my God, what does it look like? That was it for me. I've sabotaged so many things because I'm like, I don't know what it looks like to wear that. And I'm afraid. So then I'm just going to step back into this bubble of comfortability and I'm just going to live here. But then my body wouldn't let me do it anymore. Energetically, it didn't let me show up in that space. I didn't have any choice other than to move. And the universe will do that. It's either you choose to move or you'll be forced to move in a very uncomfortable way. So now it's like I've experienced the uncomfortability of the universe moving me. And now I'm like, oh God, like I'm hearing you. I'm moving. And I think that's the whole point is it's, when you get comfortable asking yourself why, we are, if you have a look at the bigger picture and you talk about the universe, we are the universe and the universe is expansive. So it's like, why are you choosing to stay small when you're such a gift to this whole entire universe that has so much greatness to share with those around you? So much, even if you don't believe it now, just take the belief from me just for today. Until you can embody that.
That's the thing. It's like if people haven't experienced that they are the universe, all it is words. And they're going, oh, fuck, another person saying I'm the universe and I'm everything. And what does that even mean if they haven't experienced it? So how can someone believe or trust in that? Are you saying just for a day? Actually, what we can do is for a week, just try it.
Yeah.
What have you got to lose? Trust that you are everything. Trust that you are so much more than you think you are, and just see what happens. Trust in the little sign or the little person that said something to you, or trust in the sign that you read on the side of the road that just seemed like a coincidence. Trust in these things and believe that it is coming from an intelligence greater than yourself, and just see what happens. Just trust in that. Give yourself permission just for a week to believe, and if nothing else happens, sweet, go back to your old belief system.
Unfollow us. Stop listening. Call us crazy.
Yeah, it's funny because it is. It's just a belief and trust, and yes, you can either gain that from experience, but if you haven't had the experience, give trying, believing, or trusting a go, and you'll be smacked in the face with a ridiculous amount of coincidences and people and opportunities that just arise in your life that are just beyond this world. And this is what happened. This is the typical awakening, is when you start just going, oh my God, this has been here the whole time and I've just not seen it. And all it is a shift in that perspective of going, okay, if I trust that I am everything, I'm speaking to myself, these signs are here for a reason, everything is a sign. Yeah.
So powerful. And I think that's what's important, Rue, is that we're out there learning and think we're expanding, which we are absolutely, but we're not taking the action. So you're sitting there reading a book for like a month, but have you actually taken any of the steps that the book suggests you do? So it's almost like you go into hiding. It's like another form of self-sabotage from stopping you from taking the action. And this could be another new podcast around the fear of judgment and why we stay in the same place. But it's like just actioning each and every day, and then that each day turns into a week, and that week turns into a month, and it's the compound interest and the compounding effect that it has that makes the biggest difference. That's what I've found. It's not about trying to get to the end goal the next day. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to show up today and do 5 minutes of meditation. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to go for a walk on the beach and grind. Okay, third day, feeling what feels right for me in that moment, not having a structure. Some people like structure. I'm more of a flowy person. So it's like, okay, what feels good for me today? That's what I'm going to do. And then a week's gone by and you just feel completely different energetically. And like you said, you then start attracting more of the great stuff in. It's energetic, and we're vibing at that low frequency of self-judgment and fear and guilt and resentment, that we still keep attracting that in. When we shift that through coming back into stillness, raising our energetic frequency, practice of gratitude, self-love in the mirror, breath work, grounding, energetically you start to attract more greatness in as well.
Yeah, that's manifestation right there.
Yeah.
Changing a frequency, changing a vibration, and seeing things that are aligning with that new frequency to show up in your life, whether that's in a monetary value, whether that's in connection, whether that's in the quality of the food that you're beginning to eat. You're going to realize that you need better food. You need to invest in your food to match the vibrational frequency in your body. Something that I wanted to go into today with you, and it's been popping up for me recently just in conversation, is hearing that a lot of people out there, and particularly now more than ever, are in relationships with people that aren't healthy, that are very, what you'd quote, this word toxic goes around a lot. I don't like using the word toxic. I just think it's a negative or a self-sabotaging relationship with someone because you're not being looked after the way that you should be being looked after by someone. What is that? Why do people keep going down this same route of toxic relationship after toxic relationship? Why do you think that keeps coming up? Why do people not learn from that relationship and go back to that old same relationship that they clearly didn't lean into and learn from?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I've probably got different perspectives on this because I've travelled both now. So as I shared earlier, having my heart centre closed down to dad, I used to attract men in that I felt didn't love me. So if we're looking at that perspective from toxic, or if you want to say in inverted commas, or relationships that aren't fulfilling your needs and not making you feel great and your self-worth is lowering, energetically that's not a great space for you. But it's really about you looking for that resolve that we're talking from that inner child. If that person's making you feel unloved, it's because you deserve, you are not lovable. So it's actually coming back in and doing the practices around that. And that was how I used to think for a long time around these toxic relationships. And I was sharing with you guys earlier, when you have that instant connection, it's a red flag. There's a wound there. There's a trauma bond on some level. So once upon a time, I would have told the person to run and get out of there. Now, I would probably tell you to stay and learn the lesson. Because if you run, you're going to meet it again and again and again until you actually learn it. So for me, I'd be more taking a perspective, unless it was unsafe, a perspective around, what is this teaching me? Is this teaching me that I need to love myself more? Is this teaching me that I feel I deserve to be unworthy, so then I need to build my worthiness up? Because like I said, when I reflected, it wasn't that these men didn't love me. It wasn't that I was open to receiving it. So as soon as you have a shift in your heart center, or a shift in your self-worth or your value of self, the whole dynamic of the relationship shifts. That person either energetically isn't aligned with you anymore and they move on, or they grow and come on this path with you. So, depending on the situation is very independent, but my view has changed on that over time because it's something I currently travel. And even when I met with challenges, and like I shared with you, my whole part of my body just wanted to shut down and run, and I didn't. I sat in that uncomfortability, and it's grown our relationship to a greater depth for both of us. But the difficult part is that you both need to be willing to grow. If you stay in your same lane, like in your lane, because your focus is you, not with the pretense of, okay, well, if I do this work and I get them to do it with me, that's attachment and still lack. You need to stay in your lane, learn self-worth, learn self-love, all of these beautiful practices that we're talking about today. And if that person joins you, awesome. And if they don't, you organically release them anyway. It's not even an effort. They just naturally fall away.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you definitely did. What I got from that was basically the relationship with yourself is a reflection of the relationship you have with someone else.
Yeah.
So when you focus on self-love and you do the work on your own, you reflect that back in someone that is willing and open to grow with you.
Yeah.
But if you're sabotaging yourself, you're not doing the work, you're basically reiterating that the relationship with you is a reflection of the relationship that you have with your partner. If this cycle continues to happen, then you're not open to do the work with yourself, and that person is also not open to do the work with himself. And it's just two people coming together to reiterate that they don't love themselves.
Yeah.
Full stop.
It's the trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Like especially if you met with that full chemistry feeling.
Yeah.
You've trauma bonded, and like I said, once upon a time I'd have been like, run for the hills. Well, now this is actually a beautiful healing for both of you, but you have to be willing both. And it's not about asking your partner, okay, you need to come on this journey with me. It's about you loving yourself first and seeing if they join you, and if they don't, awesome. If they don't, awesome. Still more lessons, still more growth for them. You've got to remember when you're holding on to someone, and I had a conversation with someone yesterday, when you're holding on to someone, you're disenabling their growth. And yours. You need to set them free. It's not about you. It's not about them. It's about growth for you both. You need to set them free so you both can learn the lessons that you need to learn.
Yeah. There's so many listeners. I know there's so many partners out there, and especially the women that are in relationships that are coming down to Sunday stillness, and they say to me, my boyfriend just won't come. He just won't come down. I know he would love it. Is that a lack of trust in himself to try something new, or is he afraid, do you think, of the judgment from coming to something like this that is more feminine, or is it his lack of openness to learn and grow?
It's probably all of the above. Yeah, it's probably all. But what I'd advise to anyone that's trying to get the partner down to these stillnesses, it's awesome that you're trying to share that with them, but I wouldn't be asking them continuously, because what I learned is when I did this with my current partner is that I was afraid of evolving beyond him. So then it would possibly mean that I lost him, and I didn't want that. But that's not mine to handle. You can't drag them on the journey with you. You need to keep evolving yourself to evolve them and ripple onto not just your partner, but anyone you come into contact with, and they'll join you. Who doesn't want to be a part of, the energy that you emit in that frequency then? But when they feel pressure and judgment, which I was doing with my partner, is that they retract, and then it causes a disconnect then from your relationship. Yeah. Instead of you just organically going, oh my God, I just went to this stillness this morning. I feel so grounded. I feel amazing. And then you go make your breakfast, and then they go, oh, what else happened there? It's not you offloading and trying to convince them to come along with you. It's you actually embodying it. And whoever joins you, amazing.
Yeah, we get this a lot with family dynamics as well. People wanting their family to change, like wanting their boyfriend or girlfriend to change, or wanting their best friend to change, because they know where they're going. They know that they're going to outgrow if they don't come with them. So they're trying to bring them with them, and they force. And all that's doing is pushing them away even more. And what they will actually try and shoot you down and bring your energy back down, because they know they're going to lose you as well. They're going to be like, oh, what are you doing that stupid stuff for? What are you doing? You're wasting your time with that, blah, blah, blah. And that is actually them feeling like they're going to lose you. They're going to lose that love. They're going to lose that connection. And it's true, because they are. If they don't go with you, they're going to lose that connection. And it's you trusting in yourself that this is your path. And at this moment in time, these people are not your people. And the best way that you can help them is by doing fucking you. Yeah. And then they're going to see you grow. They're going to see that energy, that vibration. And later down the track, the funny thing is they'll circle back in. They'll start asking the questions. And that's when you can hold them with love and you can help and support them. But until they start asking the questions and it comes from them, it is just, it's your journey.
Yeah, it's
funny.
So hard, yeah.
Ryan and I, it's been a year and a half now since we've been doing our thing, and we had to really not cut ties. It's not like we've rung up all our mates going, we're not friends anymore, see you later. But it's just like that slow distancing and going on our own journey, and you maybe not talking to our friends as much as we had. A lot of them are starting to ask now that they see this energy we're at, they see how much we're able to impact and the perspective we have on life, the energy that we radiate into the world. They're starting to ask the questions. Oh, what do you do? Like, how do you get started? Like, you're really inspiring, these kinds of things. And it just really reiterates that fact that us trusting in ourselves on our journey and knowing that these people that are in our life at the moment don't need to be there right now. And it is okay to slightly distance ourselves and trust in our own journey at the moment. And if they come back in, amazing. If they don't, amazing. You're doing you, and what you're doing makes you feel right.
I love that. And it is the attachments. My journey has been similar, specifically with my family. It's almost like I felt like we call it the black sheep. Yeah. But I think the more that I've evolved, the more I realise that we're just the more conscious one of the family, which is a beautiful gift. So since I, was constantly showing up to support my family in various areas, but then obviously I grew resentment and frustration from that because I was self-abandoning. So when I chose to stay in my lane, because it's so much easier to try and fix someone else, well, we think it's easier when we're in it. But when we realize that, oh my God, it's actually easier when we just do you and they follow you anyway. So that my relationship with my brother and my mom and my dad has evolved so much since I've just been doing my thing. And there was, confusion, I'll call it, at the beginning, where there was projection, and because there's a detachment there of a person that they remember, or, especially if you're showing up for them constantly, it's like a reliability, but then you've got to remember that I'm not empowering this person to be who they're supposed to be. I'm enabling the behavior. So when I realized that I was enabling rather than empowering, and I stepped away, there was a bit of, the tantrum, and if you want to call it the dummy out of the pram and all of that things, and you just got to keep trusting that, okay, well, this feels right for me, and even though you project, I'm just going to hold it and still stay in this lane. And now it's all changed. Yeah. So now it's like I see how much I've empowered them to be and step into their own light, instead of me enabling the behavior, which was disempowering, even though I felt I was supporting and helping, from a really conscious space. But it wasn't. It was ego of people pleasing and trying to fix everyone, and then I'd feel great and validated. It's not coming from that space. Exactly. It's trusting, yeah.
Trusting and knowing that it's all perfect, no matter what distance is created, and no matter what outcome from those old friendships happen and form into, knowing and trusting that whatever you're doing that feels right is the right thing to do. And I too have had some old friends and family really confused with my distancing and creating that space and doing what feels right for me. They've taken it on personally, because I'm open to discuss those old parts of myself that were in that state of being and level of awareness, and I was doing these things that weren't in alignment with where I was wanting to go. And they're victimizing themselves there, and they're thinking that I'm blaming them, right? But really I'm thanking them all, because they were a part of that journey, and I wouldn't change a thing. But waiting now for that reconnection with family when they let go of that, I guess, sense of guilt in a way, because they feel that they put that pain on me, or they made me push me down that route of depression and anxiety and panic attacks. No, I pushed myself down there. I pushed myself down there. It was all perfect. And I thank every single moment that created me and formed me into that person that I am now. So how and when do you think that will open up for me? Do you think I still just need to keep doing what I'm doing, or do I need to vocalize this more? Do I need to use these platforms to actually say, yo, I thank you. I'm here when you're ready to open up. I'll receive you. I'll have my arms open. And we don't hate you.
Yeah.
I don't hate you, Zul.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
I love you. I still love you, Zul. I just had to create space for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd definitely encourage you to keep speaking into your truth and sending that energy out there, because you're embodying it.
Yeah.
So they'll feel it regardless. You know how energy works. It works across dimensions. So it's like you don't even need to say it. They'll feel it. And it's just allowing them to come to the party of their own forgiveness. Because it is the guilt and the shame, and it has nothing to do with them. That's just that awareness that they need to build, that they've allowed you and guided you to learn the lesson you need to learn to become who you are today. And they've been a part of that, and look at what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And they'll get there when they're ready to. They will.
I remember
trusting that.
When we first began, they were just like, he's lost his mind.
Yeah.
Rue's lost his mind too.
Happy. Lost. Yeah. That was the classic. Oh, he's lost it. Fuck.
Yeah.
What's going on? I was going to ask a question for people that are listening, and I know there's a lot in our audience that are aware, and they do see the signs and the synchronicities, and they understand the greater concept of they are just this awareness living in this human body. What advice do you have for them? Like, what do you tell your clients? Like, do you get them to have fun, play? Like, what are some things that you advise for them to do with their life?
In terms of, like, if they are aware, like, how to keep moving forward?
Yeah.
Well, it was just similar to what we were saying, like, we're here to constantly expand. And a lot of us think that we're aware because we have particular awareness, but it's like, are you actually embodying it, would be my advice. So I've seen, and I was one of these people, I would dip my toe in. I'd do a stillness 1 month and not go for another 6, or I'd do a sound healing journey and not doing it for another 8. That's dipping. If you actually want to embody and become aware, this is a daily practice. This is something that you should be embodying every single week, really cultivating it through your whole being. So the people that are aware and they know that it feels good, it's about stepping further into that. Because if, again, as I shared just previously, you'll get to this state of contentment. But again, we're not here to be comfortable. And it's not constantly stretching yourself every day. It's like, enjoy that space for a little time, but you'll feel the itch and you'll be ready to move. But for me, for people who are aware, they'll often say it, but it's really getting aware about, are you actually aware, and doing the work and embodying it. And that's trying all different modalities and facets, doing the daily practices, connecting with people, speaking your truth is huge. Taking radical responsibility of your own stuff every single day has been massive for me, because when anything is showing up in my external, it's always a reflection of me. That builds awareness massively. It becomes like dynamite.
You've touched on this quite a bit in this podcast and previously, and it's so huge. And I think that is a huge part of the awakening journey, or becoming a more conscious being, is seeing the reflections and, like what you're saying, in someone else. If something triggers you, why is that triggering you? You're obviously, there's a part of you that is in you. And being consciously aware and asking those questions, that is being conscious throughout your day, and being aware of how your body's reacting and how your mind is reacting in every situation. That is how you become more conscious, and you start being able to dissect these things. And then, like you're saying, once we've dissected them and we can become conscious throughout our day of the things that we may be distracting ourselves with, or the things that are triggering us, and understand where they're coming from, clear that, let that through, then embodiment. Like embodiment. And it's been coming through so strong for myself and Ryan. We see it so much in this space. unembodied practitioners, unembodied people and what they talk about. And it does not matter what the fuck they say out their mouth, because you see it, you feel it. And it's so beyond the words. You can't bullshit embodiment. And it is the most important thing. It's the most important thing when you're holding space or you're looking to create change in the world. If your words are incongruent with your actions, you're full of shit, and you're not going to create the
safe container.
The love that we're here to create.
Yeah, and that's why I felt so aligned with you guys, because I know it's something that you guys embody to your own depth, similar to what I do every single day. We can't, and this isn't about us being experts in our field. We just literally are just holding space for you guys to see your own power. All of the gifts are actually inside of you. You don't need to learn anything. You just need to unlearn stuff. And because we're just walking the path just a few steps ahead of you, just allows you then to just join us at the same space. It's when people are in this space healing, if you want to put it that way, or holding space, but they're so incongruent because they're just dipping the toe in. They're not willing to do the work. They're not willing to own the stuff. They're not willing to speak the truth. That really, it's just that lack of integrity around that, and it's dangerous. So anyone that's listening, it's more around really you do feel the authenticity from the people when they're speaking the truth and speaking what they're teaching. You feel it on an energetic level. Yep. You really feel it.
And that's what we say. We say go to all the things,
yeah,
but just be aware of how you feel when they speak, and then their actions, because your body can't lie.
Yeah.
Your mind might go, okay, that makes sense, but wait, what? What's going on there? And if there's an incongruence, that's when you know that someone's not embodied.
Yeah.
And trust in that, and then learn from that.
Yeah.
And know that embodiment is so important, and for you to embody what you say and the things that you start to do. And embodiment is when we say we're going to do something to ourselves even. It's tricky when we say it in our mind, because we say so many things in our mind, but when you say it out loud or you write it down, you do it. That is embodying what you say you're doing. That is embodying your truth, and that is what builds the self-trust and that self-love.
Yeah. And that's what's important about when you embody the work. Like we was just talking about this earlier, is that you can, because you've already been there and embodied it yourself, you know exactly the experience of, or to some capacity that they're going through. So you can hold a really safe container. If you've never actually walked what you were talking, I don't know how you can teach it to other people. Like it's just more around like, and it's not even with anyone in this healing space. It's like sometimes they'll be embodying it to a level and you will be, and then you'll be embodying it further, and it's okay to let that go. And then move on to the next mentor or whoever you might be. Don't ever, because this is something that really concerned me, is I've heard people being with therapists for like 3 years. And I'm like, oh my God, that really scares me. Because that would make me feel like that other person that isn't embodying the work and actually healing themselves. Because therapy shouldn't be long term.
Let's talk into that, because we had a conversation the other day about this, and it was for me, Laura, hearing you say that you only spend, you do 3-month programs, and I was like, that's legit right there, because this popped up from conversations that I had with my mum. She's been going to this integrated health practitioner for 2 years, and Mum's been doing amazing. She's been leaning into the work, which is really exciting, because for me, I had to really distance from family as I stepped into my own, and I moved over here and I created space so I could put energy and time into what we're creating. And I was just willing and waiting for my family to come through and be curious and want to do the work. And when Mum started doing that, I was like, she's just another human here wanting support. I'll give her that support, And it was exciting. But she was having all these breakthroughs, really elevating herself. I remember her messaging me saying, my body's ready. I'm getting goosebumps in my body now. I'm starting to hear frequency in my ears. And I was like, oh, she's getting it now. And it was exciting. And she's been seeing this integrated health practitioner for 2 years now. And Mum thought she was doing amazing. She was feeling really good in her body. And then this practitioner told her that she had more childhood trauma to work through. And she rang me up and she's like, I'm not feeling really good today. I've got more work to do apparently. And, no, you don't. No, you do not. You've been working for this for years, Mum. Like, it is your choice in this moment whether you want to embody and feel that emotion that's attached to those words that she told you, or do you want to come back to your center, know that you've moved through that, know that you've done the work and you've healed through that, and now you choose to be a hero and be more present and live in the now instead of back there.
Yeah.
2 years, it's way too long.
Yeah, I feel it is. I think, I don't think it's too long to be in therapy, if you want to call it, or healing, but with the same person. Is where I get a little bit concerned, because you should be able to evolve and grow quite rapidly when you're in a really safe and trusting container. So the 3-month program that I do is really intensive, and it's high-end support and communication. So often when you go into therapy, it's like one session every 3 weeks. So then you're just rehashing the 3 weeks. You're actually not getting to the nitty-gritty of the core of what is actually constantly showing up in your external. And that's what happens when we're working with the conscious mind and not the subconscious. So it's using a multifaceted array of modalities. So go to a therapist, but try sound healing, breath work, tuning forks. Like, actually research what is out there to shift this energy through your body. Don't just stick with the one person. And if the one person is encouraging you past, okay, I'll say max 12 months, then I would question that and to see why.
Question their why.
If you feel like you're in the
They
same
want the
space.
money.
Yeah.
Give me your money.
Yeah.
I love how you explain there, like, all these different modalities, and you're so right, because they're all doing very similar things. They're bringing you back home within yourself in some way, or moving energy, and they all do it. And it's just like, what does your human body enjoy the most? Stick with that, because you're going to be able to do it more. You'll actually want to go to these things and commit to it, rather than going to the one that your friends go to but you don't really resonate with, or you don't get much out of it. Like, some people might love coming to breath work, but you're like, oh, I don't know, it feels weird for me, I don't really like it. But you may love going to like yoga, or like a sound healing, or you might like going to a holistic psychologist, and you just really enjoy that space. So try the things, listen to your intuition, see like, oh, what would I like to go to first? What would I like to try out? Go and try that one. If that one you don't like it, try the next one until you find something that works with you. And then play with that for a while, because like you're saying, there's so many different ways to do this.
There's
and it's
so
just
many.
What's right for you.
So many. And it's when you're not willing to let go of that person is a codependency and attachment. And that in itself is really unsafe and dangerous. Yeah, it's trauma bonding again. But it does come back to the practitioner to be able to see that. And that means that they're not embodied in their own work, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel that if you've gone past that 4-month, 5-month period, then that practitioner or person that's holding you in that space hasn't formed enough trust for you to fully feel into yourself, to de-root that causality of this trauma or this unresolved problem that you have in your life. That I feel is what suffering is. It's a choice to not feel fully into your pain. Right? It's just running away. It's distracting. Yeah. That's suffering. And it's your choice. You have the choice right now whether you want to open yourself up, open your heart up, feel and experience the love that you have for you, or to close your heart off, to not feel that sensation and to continue suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything that you guys have said. Resonates on a deep level.
Oh, yeah.
Bingo.
Bingo, bongo. Don't start saying that.
You could just talk about it so much and go off on different tangents.
We could go for hours, especially with someone like yourself with so much knowledge and wisdom. But we like to keep these to about an hour, and we'll wrap it up there. But just thank you so much. We will finish with a couple of questions. I don't have my
off the top of the head
my list of 10, but we will finish with one that we do ask all of the guests that come on, and the question is, if you had one message to share with the world, what would this message be? If every human got to hear this and they had to do this and embody this for a day or a week or a year, what's the message?
The message would be that you're an absolute gift. Like, what you hold internally is something that can shift the frequency of the world. And it's when you actually embody the practices and start trusting that, and then you'll see it, even if it's just you sharing something with one person, that person goes and shares it with another 10, and then you have no idea where that goes. Sometimes we're too busy looking at the bigger picture when it's like it's actually coming back just to the one person and how that can change someone's life. And that comes from you, within you, always.
Beautiful.
That was amazing. And for those that really resonated with you and could feel the energy that you brought, and like, this woman is speaking to my body, my soul,
Everyone's
my
going,
heart.
yes, that's me.
Where can they find you? Where can they find you?
The best place is on Instagram at Her Successful Mind, and from there you can see how you can connect with me further.
Amazing, because we've spent the half a day with you
Yeah.
so far, and it's been amazing. We had a podcast session down at the cafe before. We should have had the mics on down there.
Yeah.
It's been amazing to connect with you, and we trust that the audience today that are listening.
Shoot Laura a message.
Yeah.
Say hello and tag her in in your story with us. We're making a few clips and share the love.
Thank you so much for what you do, guys. It's been amazing connecting with you today. Feel honoured. Thank you.
Pleasure. Big love, fam. Enjoy the rest of your walk with the cat and swimming with the croc. Big love.